as well. So thank you very much, panel. So what I'll start with is a very quick rapid fire, if you don't mind, right? So again, so the first question which I have, and then I want all of you to answer in one number, is what percentage of electrolyzer, let's say, let it be an alkaline or PEM, whatever you're building, can be localized or indigenized? It can be a range. You can say 55 to 65, 65 to 75. What is realistic? Or what is your aspiration? If you can just state one number each of you, we can start that panel.
Yeah, so maybe starting with 70% and moving to between 80 to 90 over the next 3 years.
Wonderful.
I'll say starting with 80% and moving to 90% in the next 2 years or so.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I'll be conservative here. I'll start with 50 and then slowly go to 80. Yeah? Right.
50 to 80. Wonderful. Thanks.
Well, I'll stick with 80% today, and in next 3 years, I want to get to 100%.
Very nice. Wonderful. Bhaskar.
Okay, I'll stick to 65% today and 85 to 90% next 3 years down the line.
Great, great. So I think that's a great start, that everyone is above 51. So that's something to be optimistic about, and all of us are talking about 80 plus, right?
So also say the definition of make in India is
met. Yeah. So I think that's where I lead to the first round of questions on this particular topic, right? I mean, and the question of the prompt would be, like, what is the biggest challenge? Is it scale? Is it technology? Is it talent? Or anything else that can lead to that 80 or 90% in the next 1 year? So whoever wants to start.
I think this question has been asked at least to 3 of us in many forums, and the answer is simply demand. Okay. Yeah.
Demand.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, I think just elaborating on that, we have discussed in the previous panel about how India built automobiles, everything. Everything was built with normal rules of, let's say, business or commerce, that there is a demand. Okay, you try to fulfill the demand by producing at lower cost or with features. For the first time, we are trying to see, like, the logic can always be turned on its head. There are 32 companies manufacturing electrolyzers in India, and there is only one tender. So there's only one out of 32 going to get the business. So when I go to my financiers, the challenge that a finance company sees is the demand is yet to build. So I would 100% agree with Vaidya that it is the demand. More demand will spur everything else in the sector, And the only sector today I compare with us is the AI. Nobody knows what's the product of AI, how you're going to commercialize it. Look at the money that is being synced there in AI, But here we are setting up in anticipation of demand. So demand will drive most of the other things, which we are going to discuss probably over the next few minutes.
Got it. So demand again, sir?
Yeah, so I absolutely concur with the views which have been expressed, because demand is central, And I'd like to give another example, because anyway, since demand has been talked about, say I come from L&T Electrolysers, and we have the pressurized alkaline technology electrolysers with us. So in this case, say in terms of material, in terms of electrodes, nickel is one of the key components. So by giving that example, the nickel value chain, I feel, has to be developed in India. It doesn't exist today. Now, nickel in the form of, whether it's a wire mesh, it's an elastic element, but this value chain, if it has to be developed, and we go to a vendor, or we go to some foreign vendors and we talk about agreements. Similarly, we talk to domestic vendors. The first question which they ask is, what is the volume you are talking about? Which is central. I'll take the example of one more item, say, which is the membrane. Again, it's one of the most important components as far as the stack is concerned. Now, even in the case of the membrane, we have practically talked to some vendors here, and what they ask is, before they they have to make a business plan. So business plan is, where is the demand? How much can you tell us is in the next 5 years will be the projected requirement? And actually, I don't think we have the answer in front of us. So these are the 2 points which sort of I would like to express in this question. So it's centrally, the first question is a demand, and then the other features come.
Value chain comes in next.
Value chain comes.
Yes. So your views?
Oh, I think my fellow participant, he answered the right one. There are 2 components which are very crucial. One is that electrode he was talking about, nickel. And the second one is separator, which he mentioned as membrane. I think these 2 are highly, very complex technological things which we need to manufacture. Separator will definitely require 2-3 years of hard research before we can develop and start manufacturing in India. Same thing could be true with certain forms of nickel. The rest of the component, that's why I rated today we are more like at 80%, but I do believe in my research team, we are actively working on bridging other 20%. So in next 3 years, I think we should be able to manufacture all these components in India.
Wonderful, wonderful. Bhaskar.
Okay, my fellow seniors has explained about the value chain and the demand. Along with that, what I would like to add, I started in 2009 doing electrolysis, and I'm doing still today. I was driving a bicycle, and I'm supposed to drive a truck. So that technical know-how in-house is also required, very critical point.
Great. So basically demand, value chain, and of course technical know-how, right? So segue from demand and then moving a little bit further, right? So one of the things which we have seen primarily in the solar industry is that, let's say, most of the projects which are built over here are supplied, let's say, by Chinese solar panels, whereas most of the solar panel manufacturing gets exported to, let's say, Europe or to the US, right? Specifically to the US. In terms of electrolyzers, do you see a similar trend happening? I mean, from your experience, from your discussion so far, what kind of markets are you looking at?
I was talking to Mr. Bala in the afternoon, and I think we missed the bus in solar. I think India should not miss the bus in hydrogen. And how that will come is only on, the scale. Today what we are looking is, megawatt project. I think India should look far ahead, and that will be driven by public sector. Once we look at refineries, I mean, we are talking about that, sir, is that 1 million tons. Once India looks at gigawatt, projects coming in there, then automatically the supply demand, question will fly away. Then the, economies of scale will come into play, and then the cost will come down. I think the steps has to follow in this sequence. Look at big picture, build a gigawatt or think about gigawatt, and then, drive the supply demand.
Yeah, so John Cockerill will follow model of make for the market. So we are going to look at each market primarily because we feel the signals are that like India is thinking, almost every country is thinking, not to depend on a particular geography or a territory or a country for critical energy requirements or energy equipments. So therefore we would be ready to export from India to other countries, but generally most countries are trying to put this as one of the key product to be made within the country or a block of countries. So you see various tenders saying 25% import allowed in Europe, 75% should be from Europe. So with those trends, we are not looking at only concentrating in one, but having a little diverse bets. Thanks.
Yeah, we have debated over this, whether we are manufacturing these electrolyzers for Indian market or for international market, and our views have changed in last 12 months. 12 months earlier, we were focusing on this manufacturing, which we are setting up in Mundra. The first plant is going to be 1 gigawatt, which is going to be expanded to 5 gigawatt of yearly production in 5 years. So the plan was to do it for captive consumption, that all the electrolyzers will be used by Adani to produce hydrogen. But in last 1 year, we have realized, why just manufacture for Adani alone? Why don't we sell it to the open market all around the world? So now we are actively seeking international compliance and standards so that our electrolyzer is certified to be sold in European countries and US, and the plan is to sell all around the world.
Wonderful.
Yeah, as my colleague said, it is just not to be restricted within India. Means my own philosophy, you can say whatever, plus minus 2%, that's 10%, 60% we should go for indigenous and 40% we should be ready for export kind of thing. Where that again, last session, Mr. Chandani said very rightly that China is 25, Europe is 100. So we should be somewhere between 50, say. Still, it will be better than 25, and we will be having some advantage of getting that European fund into leveraging into Indian manufacturing and scaling up the manufacturing. So both the markets should be addressed, correct?
Got it, got it.
So at L&T, over the last 1.5 years, we've completely indigenized the value chain of electrolyzers, and minus the items which are not manufactured here, like the membranes. So typically, this is a product which we are currently manufacturing, assembling it at our factory at Hazira. And we, not only as a part of our business plan, but we want to concentrate on the Indian market, but at the same time, in the global market also. So here, I just also would like to point out one more thing as far as you mentioned about China, I think the government of India has done a lot of sort of steps in the right direction with the NGHM, and Bhala Saab is sitting at the center, the architect of this program. So in terms of demand, there have been a lot of steps which the government has taken in the positive direction. But I also feel at the same time that if you look at how the Chinese do it, typically their ratio in terms of GDP and the manufacturing contribution, when it exceeds 25%, then that country looks at backward integration to that extent, where if the electrolyzer OEM capabilities are to the tune of, say, 10 gigawatts, they'll have a backward integration with the component vendors or the non-critical items which have to be manufactured outside to the similar extent. So that means they'll have a vendor base which is equal to the electrolyzer OEM capacity and capability, which I feel is a big thing. Now, if you look at the Indian context, we are looking at, with the PLIs coming in, we are looking at developing an electrolyzer OEM base of, 7 to 8 gigawatts in the next 2 to 3 years with the incentives which have been awarded. But ultimately, if we look in terms of backward integration, I feel, we look at a vendor base in this country. I think we have a vendor base in this country which is equal in megawatts, So we really have to build up capabilities to reach to that ultimate aim, and which, I think a lot of co-panelists have said is really required to bring down the costs and finally achieve whatever all we are thinking of.
Great, thanks for that. And I think just kind of adding on that and the segue to another question which you may start with answering as well. With respect to the electrolyzer manufacturing, are you looking at, let's say, the vendor base? Does it already exist in terms of other industries which needs to be matured with tooling or design for manufacturing so that they can be expanded into the electrolyzers? For example, it's an automotive industry or an oil and gas industry, or let's say in terms of rectifiers, you have an electronics industry. Or are you looking at a completely new kind of vendor base being created? Or are you looking at, let's say, a complete vertical integration inside your factory itself, right? What kind of approaches are you looking at, and what is the current state in that respect?
So I think that's a very nice question. I'll try to answer it to the best of my ability. If you look from the electrolyzer perspective, I'll divide it into two parts. First, as an electrolyzer OEM, I'll divide it into components which I would like to manufacture in-house, which means the core technology-based items, which I would like to do manufacturing in-house. And second are the items where I feel it can be outsourced, right? So when I talk about the items which can be outsourced, I believe that there is a vendor base in this country. As we have seen in this last 1.5 years that we have gone to the market, but those vendors have to be hand-holded. And when I say hand-holded, it means we have to be with them, our supply chain management people, our quality people, developing ITPs, and developing the acumen of the workmen who is at their shop floor. So, I mean, it really requires a lot of efforts, because I've seen it with my team in the last 1.5 years, and it has taken a lot of efforts. There is a vendor base in the country which can do that, and who are doing that. But then again, I again come back to the same point. It is finally, in terms of investments, that the small-time MSMEs ask us, please give us commitments, please give us assurances. And there again is a question mark, which finally comes back
Demand
to
side.
demand only. Right. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think you asked a question. I would say the entire electrical electronic side, already it is developed. We have, manufacturers here who have supplied already to 7, 8, 9, 10 electrolyzer makers globally, even though in India there were no installations.
Right.
So that's developed. There are few things which are very specific, like a diaphragm which separates oxygen and hydrogen. Right? That's not required in many other industries so far. That need to be developed or maybe imported for time being when the volumes are lower. The rest of the processes, which is mechanical engineering, like your turning, milling, and creating the bipolar plates, they are available, but in some cases they need to be scaled up, because so far electroplating requirements for automobile were limited to smaller items. Here for a larger machine, we are talking of now 2 meter diameter plates. So some of these will be very specific. And to that extent, I would say to your second question is, this is where I think collaboration, somebody said in the previous panel, is going to be keyword. Because of one bipolar plating vendor today supplying to maybe 4 or 5 of us is the right model till the volumes are achieved. If all 5 of us are going to put our own lines, 4 of us are going to wait after one tender is opened. So, so that's the collaboration, which is what is possible. Second thing is, I think all 4 or 5 of us are in different, areas in India. We are at South, we are in Kakinada, Andhra Pradesh, Hazira, Mundra, and other places. So, some of these vendors could be local machining. Some of it could be maybe common because the volumes are not there. Some of it is a challenge, I think, the diaphragms and, related electrode, plating, catalyst, because the volumes required for developing them would be little on a higher side. And that's where, everybody would wait for demand to stabilize something and then, invest in capacities. That's the way that we are looking at developing supply chain.
Got it. Thanks. Sure. Atulji, especially if looking at the backward integration which Adani
Right.
looks at.
So the way I see, I have been working for last 2 years only for Adani. I lived all my adult life in North America, so I'm being reintroduced to India one more time. So the way I see it, that we have learned lessons from our success in solar industry. We started with buying the solar panels from China, realized all the money is going to Chinese company. Then we started buying cells and started converting those cells into panels. Still money was going to Chinese company. Then we thought, hey, why don't we start with growing our own crystals, making our own wafers, and do the whole backward integration. So this time, there is no plan to buy anything from anywhere. Learn from my lessons, do everything from the scratch, and that's what is being done. And somebody talked about financing all these component manufacturing sub-plants, which will be around your main electrolyzer plant. I think I have been very fortunate. I haven't been worried about the financing part. I have a wonderful commercial guy there. No, in my company there is not much problem with the financing. It's the strategy, what we need to do at what timing. So coming back to what components we can manufacture in first 2-3 years and what we will leave it for later part, which I described earlier, and somebody did touch on that one. Power electronics sector is very well established. There is an area between Bangalore and Chennai, which is powerhouse for power electronics and many other electrical related things. Steel works, all the fabrication of vessels, separators, purifiers, that can be done. It definitely boils down to the thing which I was talking earlier. It comes to the separator. My colleague mentions as a membrane, it's same thing. And the electrode catalyst. That's what we are focusing on, developing our own novel things so that we can manufacture in India.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll go with Shekhar, what he said, that as on date, we are not going to buy from China, but we can adopt their business module. At least I can count 100, if there are 100 or more electrolyzer manufactured in China. Most of the OEMs are common. You look at anything, separator, purifier, dryer, things are coming from Nagarajan. That's only single one company. Everybody is buying from them. Even the electroplating of the electrodes, the main plants, bipolar plates, those are outsourced. Everything is outsourced. Only the nickel mesh and the diaphragm. That's what you do in-house. Now, if we can have certain ancillaries who will produce for all of us, yes, obviously they will have a number. Individually, if we approach one party, second party, third party, it's not going to happen in India. We'll be behind. We are blocking China. Okay, we are blocking China, but we are not pacing up with their technology or their upgradation. So we'll be behind. So one thing, we have to have our own setup and we have to pace up with the global requirement. We cannot just sit and say, okay, we blocked somebody. I am not running also. That's not the case. So we have to have some sort of understanding between all the manufacturers, except for the niche inside that differentiates between him and my technology. The rest of the things are common. We can get it done.
So, so just moving from there to talking a little bit about, jumping a little bit on the cost side, right? And then I'll come back. We've been seeing some, let's say, of course, European numbers, $800,000, $1,500 per kilowatt. We're seeing some Chinese tenders talking about $150, $80 per kilowatt as well. Very recently, something which came up 2 weeks back. I mean, like, the price discovery in this seems to be very, either transparent or untransparent. But what is your opinion? I mean, what are the, of course, in terms of the LCOH, electrolyzer cost is just a 20-30% component of the entire equation. But are there any cost targets? What are you looking at? Is it a market-specific thing? And how do you explain this $150 to $1,000 switch, or let's say delta? So, Atul sir, do you want to start?
Yeah, cost is the hardest part to talk about. I don't think any company wants to share the cost number. But here also I find myself in a very fortunate situation. I have control over the electricity cost because my company grows single crystal and makes their own whole thing, solar electricity all the way. We have our own transmission company, we have our own distribution. So I have full control over the cost of electricity, which constitutes almost 70% of the cost of hydrogen. So 30% is the capex. That's what I worry about. That's the job I have taken to cut down that 30% cost. I think if the cost of electrolyzer per kilowatt is going to exceed $300, it'll be hard to compete or sell it in the open market. I think $300 per kilowatt should be the total cost for the BOP and the stack together. And then you have a knob on the electricity cost, which I definitely enjoy, which I can play with. And then I can make a cost competitive hydrogen.
It's a very steep ambition you have set.
So $300 is a good number, but I don't know when it can be achieved in India, so just to be sure of that. But if you look at that, I think we have to look at, what is the reliability factor, what is the TCO we are looking at that. I think just looking at the capex alone will not be, a good benchmark is my opinion here.
So Shekhar is speechless. So he's just thinking. And looking at him, I'm also now speechless. But I, without sort of commenting on the number part per se, I would say it's in three parts again. The capex, which is the electrolyzer capex. Second is the OPEX, number of units of electricity consumed to produce 1 kg of hydrogen. And third is the other reliability and durability part. So my feeling is that there is no reason why we cannot compete with the Chinese in terms of the costs if it is on an apple-to-apple basis. So, I mean, the fundamental fact is, if my electrolyzer is using a membrane which is an imported membrane, which there is only practically one global manufacturer today, and similarly, sort of the other material which is being used as far as the frame is concerned, or even in terms of the coatings, then as per our analysis, there is no reason that we cannot compete with the Chinese also.
Wonderful. Shekhar, sir.
Yeah, so I think I'll answer it a little more globally, right? Steel is about 4 to 5% cheaper in China. So is nickel. So I would say rest of it over next 3 to 4 years, India can certainly, go as good as China. And India has proven it in the conventional power sector. Today, the supercritical power plants in India, when you compare the heat rate and everything like-to-like basis, are absolutely on par with China. India has not bought a supercritical plant for last so many years from China. So I would say it's a mechanical industry with standards, like for the pressurized one, there is a ASME standard, etc. So it's instrumentation, electrical. So I would say we would certainly catch up with, I think the point Siddharth made is very right, apple to apple. Because, China is a market, and Bhaskar ji mentioned 100 suppliers. They are at different price point. But I would say the top 4 or 5, India can certainly be hold on their own. Yes, it will take 2 to 3 years because we do not have the supply chain yet. Thanks.
Wonderful. Bhaskar ji, you've seen a lot of electrolyzers in your life. So.
Yeah, Gurunath, I'll address your question from the start. Why the European price is higher and drastically higher than compared to Chinese price? Europe has seen they are running the electrolyzers on variable power. China is running on constant power. The moment you start running your electrolyzer on a variable power, your life comes down from 60,000 hours to 10,000 hours. Europe is guaranteeing you with variable power with that quality, and you don't expect China to guarantee that. So that is why the price difference. And any of the electrolyzer, if you could run your car, 40 kilometers, 60 kilometer brake, 40, 60, 90, everything is gone. Nut, bolt, washer, everything is gone. So you have to make it robust, because Europe don't have that kind of thing. So they made the system robust, and then they are coming up saying this is the price. Now, I am talking to the European guys also that, okay, you have developed something in Europe. It does not mean the same thing needs to be adopted in India. I don't have minus 20 degree other than Leh or Ladakh. Your every system is made for minus 20 degree. So why don't you adopt Indian environment and come down with the price? And they're looking at it. So we have to make it regional and not take only Chinese, not only European, because none of those will work in Indian terrain. We have to adopt them. And then the price will come. As he said, $300, I think it is possible. And mechanical fabrication, giving a demand, I can beat any Chinese manufacturer any day.
Right. So talking about, great Bhaskar ji, I think that's very optimistic from the Indian ecosystem. So I think getting into a little bit more technicalities, if I may, and feel free to answer who wants to. If you look at it globally, I mean, there are a lot of these larger players who are setting up SOEC factories, right? I mean, there are players who are setting up PEM factories, and then of course there's alkaline. And there is, in general, a kind of talk around hourly matching, suiting PEM more than alkaline, for example, and for green ammonia and refineries, SOECs to be more interesting. How are you looking at it? I mean, are there fast-acting alkaline electrolyzers, or what is it that is determining your technology strategy around the space?
No, I think if you look at technology, I will not differentiate technologies. All are good in certain applications. And I would say if you look at AWE, where we are here, there you should use tools like auto load balancer, which is already prevalent in other industries. That will extend the life. I mean that's what we are talking here. And then in certain applications, let's say refineries, for example, then you can have an AWE with an SOEC, and depends which has to run when at what loads. Okay. So we should not block or say that this has to run with AWE and this has to run with PEM. I think you can have a combination of that. It all depends on what the end customer wants, and then what is the benefits he's going to get there. I think this will decide that. It's not one versus another. I think all technologies can coexist, is my opinion there.
Yeah, I think more and more technologies are required, because we need for green hydrogen to be meaningful, the LCOH has to be down. So more and more technologies are welcome. I think there is going to be a little bit of all of everything as applications develop. But my point, and based on the previous, is, are we making it too tough for the technology to stabilize by putting so many conditions? And I really want to appreciate the Indian ecosystem and government's effort. India has a unique position of central grid, which not many developed countries also have. And therefore we are able to utilize energy better, right? So far, the world is driven 70% on thermal power, right? Thermal power, once you start, you can't stop more than 10, 20 times in the entire life, right? So we know how to manage it. We know there is a grid mechanism, there is a load mechanism, there is a hydro, all of that. I would say there should be a period, and I think India has done really well to allow grid till 2030, so that the technology stabilizes and we know exactly how it correlates. But to answer the question, yes, there are some technologies which are good for start-stop. Do we need start-stop is a question. I think that's an important question, because if we are going to replace refinery green ammonia or green hydrogen, you don't really need a start-stop. So I would say all technologies will coexist. We are looking at other technologies as well, but it also has to marry with the maturity of technology, because typically people look at investing in this type of thing with at least 15-20 year period. And I cannot offer something which has run for 6 months and the results are yet to be stabilized. Thanks.
No, I will add in that is that what Shekhar was mentioning. For Nucera, we already or in AWE, we are there for years in that, and in India, 50 years in chloralkali. Recently, we are working with Fraunhofer for SOEC, and the pilot will come in this year. So we have two technologies, which is one a mature technology, one which is under there. And like I said again, so it depends on which customer wants and how basically the technologies can coexist here.
I'm a big fan of SOEC. The efficiency is great, and I have been big fan. I devoted first 30 years of my life doing SOEC. But when it comes to maturity, definitely it's not ready in my opinion. I don't see any large-scale installation anywhere working in the world and generating hydrogen in cost-effective way. So we have chosen alkaline. It does have certain drawbacks. It doesn't follow the load as quickly as one would like to. But in last 2 years, my team has worked on certain strategies. And today we have a 5 megawatt, which is a decent size, alkaline electrolyzer connected to the solar panel. And using our algorithm, we are trying to prove that there may be some way to use this alkaline system in a load varying situation also. When it comes to other two technologies, we are open to all four of them. We keep our eyes absolutely wide open. We are looking at anion exchange membrane very actively. We do look at PEM also from time to time. So we are open to anything which can be commercialized and installed in the giga scale.
So it goes back the same way. We have nuclear power, we have thermal power, we have wind, we have solar, we have hydro, and nobody is comparing which one is better. It's all demand based. So we can have alkaline, we can have PEM, we can have SOEC, we can have AEM. It makes sense, mix and match and uses. Alkalines, if you compare, they are slow in start and stop. Okay, overall efficiency is better, capex is low, keep it for the base load. PEM, life is less, run it less, but on the peak loads. So you can have all mix and match. The algorithm, what he said, is the correct thing. We should know which one to run at what level, and the purity should not come down. Final gas purity should not come down. If I am running an alkaline, people are claiming 30% they can do turn down. It is impossible. Alkaline, you cannot do 30% turn down. Anybody challenges, it can be proved. So don't run it at 30%. Keep it at 50, 60. Now mix and match. You have so many DG sets in your industry. Different KVA ratings. Something is 10 years old, something is 2 years old. You are all syncing them. Why don't you sync all these electrolyzers? It's good.
So I think the points have been covered. What I would just like to state, I mean, every technology has its pluses and minuses, what comes out. From our perspective, we have the alkaline technology with us, and the sort of, they've been indigenously manufactured, assembled. We have a testing station which is working at Hazira, and the input is solar power, what we're using. So there, with the sort of improvements which we are doing also, we our sort of electrolyzers are able to come to a turn down of 25%. And that is what we've seen over the last 1 year. So, and still work is being done in this direction. So, and finally, ultimately the thing is, it's all a question of LCOH, right? So whether it is alkaline or PEM, which are the two most mature technologies, it is finally the levelized cost which drives the whole decision making. So that's it.
I have one last prompt and then I'll turn to the audience for questions. Over the past at least 3 to 4 months, right, 6 months, we have heard a lot of news, let's say green hydrogen systems almost going bankrupt, Cummins, Accelera, $600 million losses, extreme level of undercapacity in Chinese electrolyzer markets as well as European. And I mean, like, do we as India, in terms of Indian manufacturing capacity, like how are we looking at it, and do we have the, let's say, capacity to absorb this level of, let's say, losses? Or is the Indian manufacturing ecosystem with respect to electrolyzers a different world altogether?
Yeah, so I think very important question, and I don't think I have the answer as of now. But I want to again appreciate, the Indian ecosystem, the government, MNRE, because for financing of this venture, to manufacture electrolyzers in India, we were interacting with financial institutions, and every institution asks simple thing, okay, what's last 3-year market? If there is no market, they say we don't want to be the first one, so you do it fully on equity basis, or whichever way you can find venture capital, etc., but not on a debt finance basis. So I think we went back to MNRE, okay, and realized that because it is a demand which is a forecasted demand, not yet historically proven demand, it needs to be looked at little differently. And I think ministry did really well to explore, financial institutions like IREDA, who have actually helped to build the entire 100 gigawatt plus of solar, in addition to, of course, other financial institutions. So I think this is happening. So your question is about losses, right? I can tell you hydrogen CEO's life is short, unless you are Thyssenkrupp Nucera, That's the only CEO which is there for multiple number of years, right? And the idea is we have to be nimble. Of course, again, I am excluding Adani's, right, because they have. But when we are going for a pure, manufacturing operation, which is to be standing on its own, okay, other than equity, I think being nimble in terms of being open to technological changes, being more collaborative with using industry supply chain rather than putting own capacities, all of this will help the sector to, stabilize. We have just received our first order. It's a large order, 600 megawatt plus, and I think this will give us some more learning from the field. I didn't answer your previous question about cost. Costs are really like you make one car. How do you predict what's the cost? So I think maybe in the next version of GH2 conference next year, we will have some better answers of India-made electrolyzer cost. Thanks.
Thank you, Shekhar. Anyone else? Any other comments on the question of losses and?
I think Shekhar answered for me, so I should not jump in here. But on a serious note here, Nucera as a global, if you see that is, we look at asset-light model, and we look at markets carefully. Thilo, our head of strategy is here. He'll be talking next. Is that which is the market fit and which is the go-to market? I think we look at that, and then, like I said before, it's more on a supply demand. I think that drives the decision here.
Last closing remarks, yeah.
So I feel, whenever any sector has come up or sort of has got initiated, it takes minimum 2 to 3 years to 4 years for that sector to come to, I won't even say a stable footing, but typically just to come up. So you take it regardless of if you talk about thermal power, which I've sort of seen deeply. Then when the government had asked private companies to come in for equipment manufacturing, we set up our factories, we were there for 3-4 years, and then the order started pouring in. So I think one very important thing is just to be patient in terms of where you stand. Second is, I think the government with this NGHM and the sort of discussions which they are having, and the drivers, the demand drivers. So you have the refinery tenders which are there now, though it might be for a very, very small limited capacity, but these are steps in the positive direction. And I only feel it's a question of one tender getting decided now. So if you have the latest tender which has been bid recently, say IOCL, once it gets decided and it moves ahead, you will suddenly see that the activity around that, the other OMCs will also start. So in those terms, this is from sort of my viewpoint. Thank you.
Atul sir.
I think you're talking about losses. I think when to pull the trigger will be very crucial. And companies which have done thorough research, companies which have a better sense of the market pulse, will be able to decide when to really pull the trigger. So I guess that's what is happening. That's what is all of us talked about having a lull or having a pause in this area. I think everybody is waiting and watching, not pulling the trigger. And that few people will start, then many other people will follow. So how do you minimize the loss? Well, you learn when to pull the trigger.
Thank you.
Well, I'll go into a lighter mode because all seniors have given their serious thoughts. I had a boss, he joined one company and it was $100 million that day when he joined. After 1 year, it was $300 million. So he called me and asked, Bhaskar, what do I say? My seniors are calling from international. I said, sir, even doctor calls tumor a growth. So if somebody made a loss, he made a growth. We are cautious enough not to make growth, so we are not losing.
Thanks, Bhaskar. So looking at the time, I'll just take one question from the audience. Yeah? Sure.
Since Santosh touched upon technology selection, and I would like to ask Vaithyanathan sir on technology and on a very specific industry. Since TKN has been there into both chloroalkane and alkaline, of course, given a choice for caustic soda industries, which would you propose and why?
Caustic soda, we are clear, we know that, and we are, specialist in alkaline water electrolysis. So that's a technology. We have different, bipolar and, also filter press technologies for that. But that's a technology we have matured, we have handled more than 50 years.
I had instances where I have approached the caustic soda people that they want to actually put in for water electrolysis, but rather than they went in later that we will power it by a renewable energy source, because the efficiency or the power consumption of a chloroalkaline is much more lesser as compared to alkaline.
On a time perspective, we can take it offline because this is a green hydrogen conference, not a chloralkali. But I will answer to you separately on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the panel. I mean, great. Thank you for bearing with all this rapid fire questions. I think we covered everything from cost to technology to supply chain to the overall losses and economics. So a good hand to the panelists.